Hello, thank you. This is very exciting to be here, and thanks for having our group present our work. How do I go? How do I do this? There you go. All right. So our group it has affiliations in all three schools: School of Medicine, School of Nursing, and School of Public Health. Andrea Wirtz and Len Rubenstein is from the School of Public Health, and myself. Sona Singh and Kiman Pham is from the School of Medicine, and Nancy Glass, uh, who I see in the background over there, is from the School of Nursing. It takes a Herculean effort in order to put this project forward, and so I speak for everyone, and not. So I wanted to share with you a bit of reason why we did this work, because our work is basically to present the development and the assessment screening tool for survivors of gender-based violence, what we coined as the Assist GBV. And I wanted to share a bit of my experience with you, just to lend a bit of a relevance to the research. Now, I've been working in Darfur for about better part of 4 years now, and I've worked in many other places in terms of conflict settings. But it's my first experience in terms of the conflict and its atrocities. Now, Darfur has been in internal conflict for many decades, and it's only when the North Sudanese, or under al-Bashir, who decided to arm the Janjaweed, did it to do basically its bidding, that the tip of balance of terms of power is weighed on the Sudanese side. And for example, one of the villages where I worked, Janjaweed would first start out with burning the houses, and the villagers would leave and flee, and then they would come back. And then they would kill and maim some of the villagers, particularly men. But that all the more emboldened the villagers. Then they stood their ground, and they basically believed that this is their land. And then they rounded up. Sorry, they rounded up the men and boys, and they forced them to watch them rape every woman in the village, systematically rape them. And so it just gives you an example of how powerful and how effective is the sexual violence can be, and as a weapon of war. Sorry. So we did a systematic review of the sexual violence and a global review from 1995 until recently. And out of the 854 studies that we reviewed, out of that 17 studies made the final quantitative analysis. Out of that 7,600 respondents were included in the study. The final global prevalence of sexual violence that was reported from 1995 to present is 16%. Now, we as the humanitarian workers and researchers believe that this is a gross underestimation, because this is not consistent with what we see and what we witness on the ground. But even more stark from this global, systematic review is there is no screening tool whatsoever, ever, to address this issue of the underestimation. So our study really is to develop this question of how can a screening tool be effective in terms of increasing the earlier identification and earlier treatment and referrals for survivors. Sorry. So the challenge really is, yes, you can see here, the UN definition fills most of the screen here. And it is a broad definition, and what the challenge is that we have to somehow work and develop this definition into a working definition so that we can actually use it as part of the screening tool. But also the other challenge is, what can we do in terms of a screening tool that is going to be practical and useful for the people on the ground? Because if you take anything longer, it won't be longer than 10 minutes, it won't be useful. Our methods basically is a combination of qualitative and quantitative. We did 11 focus group discussions among the providers in the urban and the refugee setting, camp setting. We did 37 in-depth interview among the survivors in the urban in Addis, as well as in the refugee camp setting in Jijiga. And then we developed a screening tool, and from that we ran it through a battery of validation. And our final step is to test for the generalizability of the tool in different contexts so that we ensure that this can be actually used in different places. Now, the results of our work, basically, this is a busy slide. I just want you to focus on what's in red. These are the domains of our tool, of our formative analysis. And it focuses on the acts, on the location, and on the perpetrators. But interestingly, perpetrators are not just armed combatants. It can be trusted family members. It can be from the community. It can be very much from the UN and the NGO workers who are supposed to be supporting and helping these people. So this is our tool. And you focus on here, you see that these the acts, who are the perpetrators, and the where. And these are basically the 6 questions that we use in order to help us identify these survivors. Now, the results basically shows that out of the 434 participants that we have screened use this tool in the urban as well as in the refugee camp setting, over 64% of these respondents reported that they have experienced at least one type of violence in the past year. Out of this, 27% reported this to get help. This is a stark difference to what we found in terms of the systematic review. The internal consistency of the tool basically just tells you how good is the tool in capturing the construct it's trying to capture. It's 77%. Just to give you range, 0.6 or less is a bad tool. 0.6 to 0.7 is a reasonably good tool. Greater than 0.7 is actually a pretty good tool. Because there are no gold standards, we had to use the Harvard Trauma Questionnaire and the Abuse Assessment Screen as the reference. The sensitivity for our tool to detect violence, those who experience violence, is 84%. The limitations of our study basically just shows that because there's significant stigma, there was not enough self-identified survivors to actually use this as the potential gold standard in terms of their experience and how good is our tool in capturing that experience. We were not able to use the retest in Jijiga because of the sensitivity of the nature. Women and girls cannot be labeled or identified as a potential survivor because they will definitely be outcasted. Now, it's hard since there are no gold standards, we don't know how good is the true accuracy of our Assist GBV tool. We hope to understand that further as we run through our generalizability testing in Dolo Ado, and which is where the camp that received most of the refugees and displaced population from the famine crisis in Somalia. So, in summary, the tool has good internal consistency. We've tried it to use it in the urban as well as in the refugee camp setting. And we hope to even further that generalizability by running the test in Colombia, where it is mostly IDPs. And we will hope to link this with the GBV IMS tool. This is a global tool that's spanning 14 different countries in collaboration with other NGOs and UNHCR. But the most important thing that we hope to do is to apply this tool and finalize this tool so that the UNHCR, which is the High Commission of Refugee, to apply this globally in all the refugee camps, well over 100 different camps globally, to help identify survivors. The future direction is that we hope to do something of this nature for men and boys, because as we know that it's not just the women and girls who are going to be victims. Thank you. Yes.
What did you learn about perhaps an increase in family-based violence in areas where there's conflict, so the perpetrators have fled?
Oh, that's a good question, because
Everyone speak into the mic for their questions. We're webcasting and we want to record all the questions.
so the question was in reference to the family-based violence and in the context of conflict. That's a great question, because we know that the experience that people go through in terms when they get displaced does not affect just the during the time of displacement. It's when they are in the camp as well, and they are forced to live in settings where they're not used to. In particular, the men, for example, in Somalia, when they move over to Ethiopia, they feel that they're being emasculated. They don't have the role that they used to have. All the rations are given to women, because to tell you the truth, I wouldn't trust men to hold this food either, or the potential abuse of it. But what happens eventually, these men don't have a role in society anymore. They don't have the ability to work. They cannot work. So unfortunately, this basically all the more feeds into the physical violence and the domestic violence that we witness. And you notice that on here, 56% experience emotional violence. A lot of it, we believe, is from the domestic situation. 43% experience reported physical violence. And sexual violence is only 25%. Well, I wouldn't say only 25%, but it's lower than what we expected. Yes.
Good morning. Of the 434 participants that you screened, were there any incentives given to them to participate in your study? Given to them?
Incentive?
Yeah. Were they offered anything to participate?
No. There were no incentives given. Actually, women were very careful, and we had to go through a rigorous process to ensure that they are somehow not targeted. This is working in collaboration with IRC, the International Rescue Committee, which is one of the premier NGOs that know how to deal with gender-based violence. And it's only through that we were able to ensure that if they go through the screening process, they will not be targeted, but they also be more aware of the services that's out there.
Thank you, Dr. Wu, for that very compelling presentation.